Nobody is talking about this potentially massive financial event that's happening in just 3 weeks. Not only is nobody talking about this, but this event could change how you think about your personal portfolio. No matter what assets you hold, it's critical that you listen. Take charge of your financial future before one of the largest financial shifts in history. This is a game-changing moment. Are you prepared? Let's get into it. Ever since the United States seized $300 billion worth of Russia's assets, we've been barreling towards a radically different monetary order than the one that survived the last 50 years. The most consequential meeting for the reshaping of the global monetary order is happening from October 22nd through October 24th in Kazan, Russia, at the BRICS Summit. Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South America will be gathering to talk about their shift and moving from dollars into a different financial system altogether. Vladimir Putin calls this the multipolar world. 2 weeks ago, Vladimir Putin made some remarks ahead of the BRICS summit. Here's what he had to say. The world is going through deep, irreversible changes that will see the establishment of a multipolar world that starts a new wave of global growth for the entire 21st century. The Kazan summit will mark the beginning of the end for the US dollar as the sole global reserve currency. It also marks the decline of the dominance of the US in the Western world in general, and the dawn of a new era, a democratic multipolar world. Do you understand how big this is? The top 10 BRICS countries represent 45% of the world's population, 36% of the world's global GDP, 33% of the Earth's surface, and 44% of the world's oil production. In terms of purchasing power, the BRICS coalition has more purchasing power than the G7, the top 7 economies for the developed nations globally. Russia already conducts 75% of its global trade outside of the US dollar, and that number is continuing to rise. And not just for Russia, but the other BRICS countries as well. And the first move that BRICS countries are taking, which is revolutionary, is moving away from the dollar by stockpiling gold. Gold demand since 2021 for BRICS countries has been on an absolute tear. Central bank demand through the first half of the year was the highest that it's ever been on record. And gold as a percent of central bank reserves is the highest that it's been in over 20 years. This has led to the recent rally in gold, which hit all-time highs last week at $2,673 per ounce. Gold's price and gold investors typically sniff out high inflation and monetary debasement before other asset classes. And it's very obvious that they're sniffing out a well-known fact. The money is broken. Doomberg, the talking chicken, says that a global reset could send the price of gold to $20,000 an ounce.
Well, the easiest way out is just everybody agrees to revalue gold way, way higher, and suddenly you don't have any debt, right? And so the U.S. is still in possession of a massive amount of gold, and many of the central banks have been accumulating it. We noticed that as China slowed down in its central bank purchases of gold, Russia picked up the slack, and so everybody's kind of getting all their chips together for the Great Reset, quote unquote. I think the Great Reset is we wake up one day and gold is $20,000.
Gold is insurance against monetary debasement. And right now, it continues to have more bid than ever. Because with the US debt reaching $35 trillion and inflation proving to be sticky altogether, people are not even going to tried and true assets like long-term bonds. The bond market has called the bluff on the faith or lack of faith that people have in the United States government. 10-year yields have soared above 4% even after the 50 basis point cut from the Fed. This is showing that investors globally are beginning to see that there is less risk in holding hard assets like real estate, gold, or commodities in favor of long-dated US bonds and treasuries. And many investors are plowing into gold, which is a good option. Gold is not the best performing asset, and I don't believe that it will be the best performing asset, even in a new global monetary regime. That's Bitcoin. Gold is the second best performing asset in the world behind Bitcoin by about 20%. And we all know that Bitcoin's been the best performing asset in the world 11 out of the last 14 years. But here's what's interesting. If you hold gold and Bitcoin and the S&P 500 in your portfolio, look out for some explosive Bitcoin returns potentially. When gold runs, Bitcoin tends to follow, and then the S&P 500 follows after Bitcoin. I ran the numbers and did the math. I took the daily price closings of gold, the S&P 500, and Bitcoin since about May of 2016. Here's what I found. When gold reaches its peak price, Bitcoin tends to reach its peak 68 days after gold. And then after Bitcoin reaches a peak, the S&P 500 follows about 51 days later. But here's the kicker. When gold rises, Bitcoin explodes. On any 1-year rolling period in that data set, Bitcoin outperformed gold by 221% and the S&P 500 by 210%. And this is the upward volatility that we talk about. And in Lynn Alden's recent piece, we saw that Bitcoin reacts most closely and is most sensitive to global liquidity, being correlated with the rise and fall in global liquidity 83% of the time. But we can see this even in the short term. Since the Fed cut rates, Bitcoin is up 17%, gold's up 5%, the leveraged Bitcoin play, MicroStrategy, is up 52%, and TLT, or US Treasuries, are down 6%. Bitcoin is just more sensitive and reacts to the upside more strongly than these other asset classes, which is why you should consider holding some in your portfolio. You can only fully realize the benefits of gold or Bitcoin if you can fully secure and protect it. With both assets, you can take self-custody and remove all counterparty risk. But there's one asset that's even more foolproof than gold because it offers more protections against physical attacks with multi-sig or even having different things like your private keys stored in multiple places. But you need to take the steps to upgrade your security and protect your critical data in your assets. There's a wrong way and there's a right way. The best way is the Bitcoin way. Their cybersecurity team will give you one-on-one personalized training to help you master these skills so that when the price of Bitcoin rips, when there's a new global monetary order, you're prepared. Become fully sovereign. Schedule a free consultation with the team today at thebitcoinway.com. In a recent conversation that I had with Larry Lepard, he thinks that Bitcoin could see 100K this year or in early 2025 as we see global liquidity continue to expand.
Gold started hitting these highs, probably a little less than 60 days ago. So, I mean, it would not surprise me to see, Bitcoin take off. And I think I said this in another podcast. I tend to believe that I think Bitcoin might be 100,000 at the end of this year. I think there's a decent chance that that something is going to break. The Fed's going to have to be more accommodative than everybody thought, and seeing that, gold is going to continue to run, silver will run harder, and Bitcoin will break out of that flag. And when it does, we all know how it trades. I mean, when it gets on a bull run, it doesn't stop.
You can access more personalized and more private conversations like these that I had with Larry Lepard when you join Columbus at joincolumbus.com, the first online digital Bitcoin community where you can get access and information from experts like myself, Larry Lepard, or others as you navigate your Bitcoin journey. Head to joincolumbus.com for more information. As the Fed prints money and the rest of the world has signaled that they are moving away from the dollar to hard assets, is your portfolio prepared? You can get ahead of the rest of the world by simply stacking sats. And with that, this is Dante Cook with Bitcoin Simply. If you haven't already subscribed, please do. We produce fire content like this 6 days a week, and you don't want to miss it. Happy stacking.